Before I start, let me be honest about something. This isn't the original version of what this final episode of Battle of the Sexes for this season was supposed to be. It was actually supposed to be a sex-based topic, but when I did the recording and I listened to it for a bit, it kind of sounded like I was a bit of a whiny bitch. So I decided to change the topic to dating because I do feel like there is something important that we need to talk about with guys and dating, or at least lack thereof, and I will get into that in a little bit. But before I get into that, now, there was a story that I saw over the weekend which I found a little bit baffling. Now, apparently, Larsa Pippen, the Basketball Hall of Famer Scottie Pippen's wife, or ex-wife, recently came out this past weekend to state that during their 23 years of marriage, she and Scottie Pippen used to bang 4 times a night, every single night. Okay? Every single night. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I'm not trying to count exactly how many days or how many rounds that is, but god damn, that sounds like a load of bullshit. And you know what? I need to throw in a bit of sound before I get into this, because this is bullshit that I need to address right.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
So before I get into why I think all of this is bullshit, I'm gonna let the clip where she gets to say this play out so that you can hear it from the horse's mouth. So here is the clip.
I was married for 23 years. I've always had sex like 4 times a night.
4 times a night?
A night? Yeah, so 3 times a week is
Hold
nothing.
on. You're telling me you had sex
Yes.
4 times a night when you were
Every
married?
night. She's just saying she
No,
could, Brady.
I had sex 4 times a night every night. I never had a day off for 23 years.
Wait, what?
What?
Yeah, yes.
What? Your poor vagina.
You had sex 28 times a week
Yeah, I swear.
for
But with
23 years?
Yeah.
So on the road too, when he was traveling? I don't
We never spent time away from each other.
Okay.
Like we had a private
Wow,
plane. I
that's
traveled with my
intense.
kids. Yeah.
Marcus has big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
We wears the size 15 shoes. I think he's okay.
Oh,
Okay, first of all, before I get into this, can we talk about the babe that had the audacity to say, "Oh my goodness, your poor vagina"? I don't know. Maybe it's the whole victimhood of babes that's a thing, but how the fuck is that something to be sorry about? Because not unless if it was forced, I don't see anything there for you to be sorry about. By the sound of it, it seems like she liked it, even though I do think that it's bullshit. And I can explain it in a variety of very simple ways. First of all, that shit would be boring as fuck after I think probably like a month of doing it. You're doing it 4 times. Alright, fine. Let's call it 4 rounds. So you're doing it, you do about 4 rounds, and it's his 4 rounds, not your 4 rounds, because, it's a guy's 4 rounds that can really be counted. By the time this guy is getting to the end of a month, he's probably already tired of that shit. But you're telling me that this guy decided to continue doing it for not a month, not a year, 23 years. That's a pack of bull. I'm not gonna say I'm sorry for your vagina, but your vagina might have been tired by some point. Then also there's the fact that this guy was a pro-level athlete and he was married to you. So even though you guys probably could do it on a couple of different nights, dude was probably very busy and dude probably had pussy on the side that he was hitting. So to think that this guy would still come back home after hitting some side chick or some random babe somewhere and still give it to you for 4 straight rounds before he slept, and the refractory period, which is the period between a guy's orgasms, isn't increasing to the point where this guy doesn't have any time to sleep, that just sounds like a pack of bull. Then also, we're forgetting that this is the babe that went and banged Future. She was pretty much the reason for the very infamous line, "I just fucked your bitch in my Gucci flip-flops." You're getting 4 rounds a night, not unless if those 4 rounds are 10 seconds each. I think your pussy would be tired by the time you're going to Future to get hit. But I still maintain the fact that this shit would have been boring as hell after a very short time. Otherwise, if such shit was actually enjoyable, I'd probably be pushing 4 episodes a day because, my voice sounds pretty good. Especially the part where I start by saying, "Welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number 1 Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya." The man on the mic is a man who will not do 4 rounds a night. I'm not gonna bullshit you and tell you that I'm gonna do that, just the same way I won't bullshit you and tell you that I'm gonna fuck you all night long. Because all of that is a pack of bull. He is a man who still believes that astrology should have been the study of ass. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show where I get to talk about banging 4 times a night. Even though it's bullshit, I talk about dating and relationships. And guys, sometimes people might be a little bit offended, and normally I give you a chance to give me feedback. So if you do want to hit me up, whether it's giving you feedback, whether it's saying hi, whether it's showing your appreciation, or whether you want to suggest podcast topics, I usually have the socials in the description in case you forget or you skip this part, so you can find me through the socials that I provide down in the description. Now, that said, for those of y'all that don't know, or at least for those of y'all that don't stay up to date with Break Time on Westside, I normally tend to take a break after doing a 12-week run with about 24 episodes, and this is week 12, so I'm going to be taking a break for a couple of weeks. I'm still trying to see if I'm going to do 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 4 weeks. And during that time, I usually do Raw Zone, which is a shortened version, pretty much straight to the point, very little editing, very little instrumentals, normally just one topic. And it usually comes in before I go in for the next season. Now, for those of you all that would like me to discuss certain topics during Raw Zone, then you can hit me up on the DMs on IG or on Twitter, hell, even on Facebook, and I would be more than happy to cover them. But as far as information goes, this is supposed to be the last episode of the current season of Battle of the Sexes. Now, all that said and done, I do want to get into our main topic of today. And it involves dating and it involves guys, and the babes are probably going to need to be keen on this as well. But before I do that, I want to address a particularly interesting story. Now, while I was on IG this past week, there was a video that I saw that was pulled from TikTok and brought to IG. Now, it was a video of an autistic guy called Darius who was talking about how he gets rejected by a lot of women who block him and ignore him whenever he tries to get to know them well. And he says that he wants to be their friend. And he was talking about how he's afraid that he will never have any wife or girlfriend because he's always getting rejected because he's ugly and unattractive. Now, there's an entire 2.5-minute video clip of this entire thing that I can probably post up, but unfortunately, because of time and the fact that we might not have enough time to actually discuss the entire thing before I get into the main topic, I'm just gonna leave the video out of this. But essentially, it is pretty much what I just explained. The guy was talking about how he's always being blocked and ignored and rejected by women, and he doesn't find himself attractive. Now, the interesting thing is, while I'm saying all of this, and at the time of this recording, there was a girl in the comment section who did say that she was interested in him, and they've been talking and they've been keeping guys updated and shit. And stuff seems to be going pretty well. But my bigger issue is still in the comment section, because most of the people who commented, and this is both on IG and even TikTok, because I went and I checked TikTok, were the babes. And the weirdest part about it is, the babes were busy saying, oh, you're fearfully and wonderfully made. Oh, there's someone out there for you. Oh, we hope that you do find someone. Like, I'm sitting thinking through this entire thing and I'm like, bitch, that could have been you. Why don't you give him a chance? Because the reality of it is, this is a guy that is having a problem with not being found to be of value by a lot of babes. Now, a bunch of you babes have seen him and you're trying to tell him that he has value and there will be someone that will find him attractive. But considering that you're the type of people that he's trying to get, aren't you the same person who should probably be asserting that value by trying to be with him? And I know there's a babe that's already done that, but y'all could have done that as well. And I'm not talking about like 1 or 2 comments. Like, this is babes in the hundreds, if not even the thousands, that were busy talking about this, and they were like, oh, I hope he finds someone. Oh, I hope he gets someone that love him because he seems like such a nice person. Like, you stop and you think about it for a second. All of this just seems like bullshit platitudes, because you could have been that person. You could have given him a chance. You could have hollered at the dude, not unless if you are either married or with a dude that you are in a very successful long-term relationship with, or even just a normal one. But still, y'all decided, you know what, let's just wish him well and then move the fuck on. Which I've never really liked with babes. Like, there's this whole trying to assert someone and give them validation, and yet you have the tools to actually help. and you don't. It's like telling a dude that, you know what, you're a good looking guy, you're really nice, you're really sweet, you're really caring, but I can't date you, even though I know you really want to be with me. Like, at that point in time, in as much as you think that you're doing something good for the guy, the reality of it is you're pretty much telling him that you're nice, you're good looking, you're caring, and any babe would be lucky to have you except me. And guess what? Hundreds and thousands of babes who are in the comment section busy trying to reassure this guy were pretty much all doing that exact same thing and just continuing with it, not realizing that they are not a part of the solution, but they are a part of the problem. Because at least with the guys, what a lot of the guys were doing in the comment section was actually trying to help this guy, because there were some dudes that were like, you know what, fuck these bitches, don't bother with them, you just go work on yourself, grow your money, blah blah blah, which isn't entirely helpful. But a good number of dudes were like, you know what, just go work out, get your money up, build some status, and these babes will not have enough of you. And that is actually how guys will encourage each other, which is actually a good thing. But the babes who could have actually helped this guy by telling him, oh, we want you, we want you, we want you, like, they pretty much just told him that, you know what, there's someone out there, just not me or us. Which I think is mostly fake and garbage, because if you did want to help the guy, either you tell him that you're interested in him, or you decide to take a shot on dude, or alternatively, you could just shut the fuck up and not say anything. You know, you can feel how you feel without hitting the comment section. Although, then again, I don't want to sound too bitter about this, so I am going to leave it aside and move it on, because we do have bigger fish to fry, so we shall move it on to our main topic of today. Now, while I was on IG this past weekend, I stumbled onto a clip from the Empty Thoughts show, and it was a couple of babes and a dude, and they were busy talking about the reasons why guys aren't dating nowadays, or at least aren't actively trying to go out and get dates. And it was a particularly interesting clip because they highlighted some research which I found to be very, very interesting. Now, I am going to play the clip for you, then we can get into it, because I do feel like there is something to be said here, and especially considering that this topic currently feels the closest to home that I've ever had a topic be, I do have some very strong thoughts on it. So I'm just gonna let the clip play, so without further ado.
There was a study called from the Pew Center Research conducted a study that said 63% of men under age 30 would rather stay home and watch porn than go on a date. Men say they are getting their needs met without having to go on a date. Would men rather stay single than be with a woman, is the question.
That's what they're saying, pretty much.
63% of men.
I think they're cheap.
Yeah, they just ain't got no money.
They don't have money, which you should get your money up before you start dating. So it is cheaper to sit home and beat your meat,
right,
than actually go out and find actual women to hang out with.
That's a sad reality.
I disagree.
Why? What do you think?
Is it less of a headache to have to deal with a woman or something?
There it goes. Like, it's a headache. Now I got to take you out. I got to hear what you had to tell your whole day.
That's why you take out people you actually like, and then you don't feel that.
Yeah, but then I got to get to know you first to like you, right?
Yeah.
So how do I get to know you?
Call on the phone.
You rather fuck your hand?
Hey, listen, I'm married.
Hey, you always got to say. Okay, so if you wasn't married,
I'd probably beat him. I mean, 100 miles an hour.
I don't know. 63% of men are watching porn like on like a daily instead of going out. I don't know. Okay, the not going out to pursue women to date, that one I can believe. But the watching porn bit, I don't know. Seems a little bit hard, because I don't think there's that many dudes that watch porn. Although at the same time, porn is particularly free. And okay, maybe it might be true to a degree. It could be true to a degree. But anyways, let me not focus on that very tiny specific thing. Now, out of everything that's been said there, of which, yes, the Pew research is there and it is actually true, 63% of men under the age of 30 aren't going out to start dating women. They'd much rather stay at home. To be very honest, what the babes were saying about guys not doing that because it's just cheaper to stay at home and not go out on dates and beat your meat because I know porn is free, they're not wrong, but at the same time, I'll say that they're not right, because I tend to think that there's a lot more reasons behind that than just it's cheaper. Like, I'm not gonna lie, the one best thing that was said there that I think probably was the most truthful that was said by the babes is the whole thing of you don't start dating until you get your finances in order, you start getting your money right and all. And that one completely makes sense. And like that one does kind of feature. But to properly understand why it is that guys under the age of 30 who are single are not going out to start looking for mates, you kind of have to look at it in a bit of a broader sense, because there's stuff that relates to the guys that need to be addressed, or at least that need to be pointed out, but there's also stuff that relates to the babes that needs to be pointed out as well. Because to be very honest, there's actually about two main reasons why it is that guys aren't going out there to start dating. And it is either they can't date or they won't date, or the women that are out there aren't worth dating. And that's just facts. That's the two main reasons why it is that guys aren't trying to go out on dates anymore. And if this is why you wanted to end the podcast because you feel like it's too long, blah, 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 I wouldn't stop you, but I can try and break this down so that it can probably be understood pretty well, because there's a little bit more that needs to be unpacked from those to kind of get to why it is that guys are in the current position that they're in. And there's some shit that needs to be addressed by guys, and there's some shit that needs to be addressed by the babes and the women and all. So I did kind of try and break it down, and in as much as that's the whole ladies first thing, I'm gonna start with the dudes here, because I feel like this one's a little bit easier to point out and guys can get it very, very easily. Now, the first reason why most guys aren't going out there to date is, in as much as it seems a little bit far-fetched, we fear rejection. And I just kind of have to put it out there. This current generation of dudes, the lower stage millennials, a lot of the Gen Zs, we fear rejection. Let's be completely honest about that. Because when you ask yourself how many guys will randomly walk up to a babe and start hitting on them in this current day and age, minus a lot of the Me Too shit and everything, the numbers are particularly low. Because especially when you look at guys in social events nowadays, it's not like there's dudes walking up to random babes and trying to hit on them. And you can blame the fact that guys nowadays just aren't well built for rejection, or they don't want it, or the fact that there's social media there, but there are also more serious reasons as to why it is guys also don't want to be rejected, or at least they don't want to approach babes. And you can blame shit like the Me Too movement, which makes like the whole workplace policy a little bit hard, so you can't go and hit on your co-worker just like that, because if she doesn't like you, you might end up being slapped with sexual harassment. If you're her superior, it's even worse, because now you can end up being fired, then the whole industry knows and shit. Although I know here in Nairobi it's a little bit more lenient, and the Me Too movement hasn't like properly taken root here, but still guys aren't trying to go and hit on babes in the office, because the whole getting a workplace romance thing has such a negative connotation for people nowadays. But even if you were to get out of the office and try and hit on other babes outside of the office, not really known to you, in other social places, there's also the fear of being looked at as a creep or some sort of an abuser or a harasser or some level of a sex predator. And that shit actually does exist. Actually, I feel like that one's particularly prevalent here in Kenya, because you're going to try and hit on a babe and you're just hoping that she doesn't look at you as a creep, because in this day and age, it's actually better for you to be a murderer than for you to be labeled as some sort of a sex harasser or even some level of a potential sex predator to babes. And as such, I'd much rather avoid trying to hit on babes randomly in random places and just stick to my lane, not worry about other babes. And if I'm going to hit on a babe, probably the one that's been introduced to me by her friend or by some other person that we probably know mutually. And as such, because we're afraid of that shit, us guys just aren't going to hit on babes. But now, if I was to turn the tables, or at least if I was to jump to the other side of the gender scale, there is quite a bit that's on the women's end that also needs to be worked on. Because first of all, the expectations have actually become pretty shit nowadays. And I'm not saying it in a bad way. I'm not saying this to, make babes all become traditional or anything. I'm just trying to point out the current reality, because I feel like there's a lot of babes that have watched a bunch of social media. They expect guys to treat them a certain way, to take them to certain places. And because all of them supposedly have standards and they deserve baby girl treatment and they're beautiful and they're perfect 10s and everything, like, there's this high standard that they expect from a lot of guys, and they think that a massive chunk of guys can actually afford to or are capable of fulfilling whatever desires and expectations they have or want. And don't get me wrong, this is something that I will definitely get into in Raw Zone, in probably even a two-parter. And most guys that are under the age of 30 just can't do that. Because one, we don't make the kind of money that would allow us to do that. And two, while we're doing all of this, we're still expected to, fulfill other things that would make us become much better fathers and much better husbands in future, which just aren't that easy to fulfill. Like, trying to save up for a mortgage or some shit. And when you look at some of the demands that are there, like, for example, being taken to a pretty nice restaurant, that might not seem like too big of an issue, but now you have to start looking at which kind of restaurant is considered nice. I've met people that literally say that Art Cafe is below them. Now, for those of y'all that know Kenya or are in Nairobi, you can talk about Art Cafe and the kind of pricing level, but there's some that will say that that's beneath them and they want something that's a little bit better or something a little bit niche. They want to go to the Intis and the Bambinos of the world and shit. And they expect you to be able to cater for that because a man's role is to provide. Even though she's not your wife, neither is she even your girlfriend at the time. Then on top of that, some of them have certain expectations that most guys probably wouldn't be very well placed to actually sort of cover, such as you being able to cover everything. And I know all of this sounds like money, but it's not just a money thing. There's certain expectations that can be set due to stuff like peer pressure, such as, making sure that she has a really good Valentine's gift or celebrating your anniversary in some big special way. Like, that shit might seem very possible for some guys, but most guys that are under the age of 30 barely have the kind of money that they can do all of that. Most of them are living paycheck to paycheck with a bit of a small loan here and there that they kind of need to cover. But even though I could put all of that aside, considering that it all sounds very financial, to be quite honest, a lot of the treatment that we get from babes nowadays is very lackluster. Especially compared to what our parents used to get and, even further back. Like, you look at how some of our parents actually ended up becoming like a thing and getting married and being together, and you compare it with the babes of today, and you know what? I can totally understand why some guys would fall for the mom more than they'd fall for you. Like, I'm just being very honest, because when you look at a lot of the babes of today, and I've had this discussion before, I feel like I've given this story a fuck ton of times of my Uber driver who was talking about how his babe would literally come, find the house is a mess and everything. She would clean up the entire house, pre-cook meals for this guy, and then they'd chill together and they'd spend the night. They wouldn't shag and she'd leave in the morning. All right. This was the kind of treatment that this guy was getting, and he's in his 40s right now. So that was probably like 25 years ago, some shit. So he felt like he was getting such good treatment. But you look at the babes today, and a lot of them will come to your place. They will literally chill, do nothing, expect you to serve them, and probably ride on dick for a little bit. Maybe they might suck it, and then they're off. Like, that's pretty much all that they're doing. Like, nowadays, what's considered to be like top tier for a babe to do for her man is gifting the man and treating the dude out, because she now makes her own money as well, apparently. And on top of that, some of these babes can't cook or even clean. Like, the hygiene is particularly shit if you actually go and nitpick a little bit. But at the end of the day, the kind of treatment that you're getting versus what our parents got, or at least our fathers got, doesn't really match up. And whatever it is that we're expected to give these babes is even more than what our mums got and what their mums got. It's not like they were being flown out and being taken to coast or being taken to the most expensive restaurant. Some of these people literally barely used to go to a restaurant. Java for them was like the toppest of top tiers, and most of them probably didn't even go there. And you're telling me that now I have to go and exceed the levels of her mom and I'm getting less than what my dad got? Come on, bruh. Like, I know it's not supposed to be a comparison game, but come on, bruh. Really? Like, come on. That kind of does bring me on to the next part, which is a lot of babes nowadays are just very, very selfish. And I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's just a lot of you guys have sort of been taught to value yourselves and to always expect baby girl treatment, and your man is supposed to be doing this for you. Doesn't your man do this for you? If your man doesn't do this for you, then you shouldn't want it. And a lot of babes actually let that shit get into their heads. And the unfortunate part of that happening is that now there's some level of peer pressure where it's like they expect a certain tier level of treatment from like every guy, so that it means to them that this man actually loves you, which I tend to think is particularly bull, because different guys love in different ways and will go to different lengths for their babes. You know, also depending on what kind of financial level they are, they could be able to do one thing or another. You might be thinking that a guy is making good money, but he might be supporting a bunch of people on the side, is busy trying to sort out debts and shit. And the fact that he's unable to take you out every so often might make it seem like he probably doesn't give a shit about you, but he's busy trying to sort out his side as well. And at the end of the day, because you're just keeping it about you, it kind of makes it seem like a bad idea, not unless if you're in a perfectly good position, which is making great money, you don't have debt, you have a good car, you're pretty much paying very little in terms of rent, so you have all this disposable income, you have a great savings. Then at that point, you will probably feel comfortable going and, you know, treating a babe the way she believes that she should be treated. Except that when you kind of look at the possibility of that happening, the best case scenario for some of those guys being able to fulfill that is when they're like 40 years old. So why bother right now instead of actually working towards being able to do it in the future, you know? Which kind of brings me to my conclusion to everything. When I kind of think about why it is that guys don't want to go out and date right now before they're 30, considering everything that I've said, I can sum it up with one very simple word: confidence. And while it might seem like me saying confidence means that, oh, we're not confident enough to approach babes, blah, 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 it kind of goes beyond that a little bit, in that the main reason we as men under the age of 30 aren't dating today is because we're not confident. And on one end, you can say that our lack of confidence is primarily because we're not approaching the babes. And you could be right about that. But the reality of it is we're not confident that we can get a good match. And even if we can, or we could, we're not confident that we will. Although, all that said and done, maybe I might be wrong about this. Maybe some guys disagree with the reason why guys under the age of 30 are choosing not to go out and date. Maybe the babes have their rebuttal to this and a reason why all of this might be happening from their end. Either way, I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open on IG, on Facebook, it is at Breaktime, on Westside, on Twitter, it is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end of this episode and of this season. Raw Zone begins next week. Thank you so much again for listening, and I will catch you guys on the next break.